following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. Hello, listeners around the world on radio, streaming, and podcast services. This is It's Not Therapy. I'm Liana, and I am not a therapist, but I am your source for navigating the madness of mental health using my top 10 sayings for going good crazy. This week, we're talking about healthy self-esteem versus the dreaded narcissism. And this is going to be a bit of a complex one because my path to understanding the difference wasn't a straight line. Self-esteem is one of those concepts that our culture really messes up, like I messed up putting the S on concepts there. There we go. It demands that we have self-esteem, and yet it does absolutely everything possible to make sure we don't, because culture is made up of people, and some of those people are terrible. In fact, our culture is more inclined to teach us not self-esteem, but a form of hyper-competitive, narcissistic hyper-individualism. In layman's terms, that means we're tearing each other down more than we're building each other up, and obviously that isn't good for anybody. Self-esteem, put simply, is how much you like and value yourself. Narcissism is when someone has an unreasonably high sense of their own importance, and this leads to an unhealthy need for too much attention and admiration. To be clear, narcissism isn't about having too much self-esteem. That's something a lot of people get wrong. In fact, narcissists tend to have low self-esteem, hence the need for attention, importance, admiration. If you have healthy self-esteem, those things are nice, but seeking them doesn't dominate your life. If you have healthy self-esteem, you need good and fair treatment, but you don't need special treatment like a narcissist does. Now, I've been hearing lately from educator colleagues that students are trying to talk them into marks that these students haven't earned. And these students say that if they don't get these marks, then they won't pass the course. And why is this the teacher's problem? Well, I don't know. Because the problem here isn't the teacher. The problem is these students haven't earned a passing grade. And passing a course, getting the credit is supposed to mean that the student earned that credit. These students want status they haven't earned. And this isn't a couple of people. This is happening all over the place. The thing that these students who, want those extra couple of marks so they can pass, what they, may or may not understand is that getting even a mark or two that they haven't earned is wanting special treatment over the other students in the course that, actually bothered to pass the old-fashioned way. Now, these colleagues who are educators agreed with me that giving these students grades they hadn't earned wouldn't be the help these students thought it would be, because these students would have to live with the knowledge for the rest of their lives that they didn't actually pass the course. Now, worst case, not worst case scenario, this would undermine their self-esteem and potentially lead to imposter syndrome. Worst case scenario is that these students are showing signs of narcissism. Trying things, making mistakes, making corrections, learning. That's how we both build our self-concept and our self-worth. And building self-concept and self-worth leads to healthy self-esteem. Now, self-concept and self-worth are two other concepts that get thrown around without a common understanding. We've talked about it on the show before, but, we're up to episode 139. Some of you may have missed it. Let's go over it again. Self-concept is your answer to the question, who am I? Self-worth is your opinion on whether the answer to the question, who am I, is good or bad. These things are formed through the interplay of your own beliefs and the messages you get from others. It's a feedback loop. It's a reinforcing spiral. Now, one of the things I do with clients is work with them to determine what behaviors they are willing to accept from others. Now, Hear me out. I'll explain what this is and then I'll explain why I do it. For instance, a behavior they will accept is hearing someone's opinion, just their opinion, not a fact, that something the client did was selfish. I'll note that I said they'll accept it, not like it. Opinions are like, bums. Everyone's got one. A lot of them stink. What they will not accept is an opinion from someone else that they are a selfish person. They won't accept that because they're pretty certain it's not true. So if someone insists on taking a conversation in that unacceptable direction, you're such a selfish person, then the client has the right to end the conversation. And the fact that they're willing to hear that they did a selfish thing, in that person's opinion, even though they don't like hearing that, that gives the client the permission structure to reject statements that attack their overall character, because they're willing to hear that somebody thought an isolated incident was the thing that violated their values of being considerate. This is how I work with clients to build self-concept and self-worth. The self-concept here is based on that core value of consideration and conscientiousness. The boundaries that we set based on this self-concept allow the client to build that all-important sense of self-worth. They're willing to hear things they don't like that they still think, all right, fair game. So that shows them, that proves to them they're still open to feedback, even bad feedback. But they're also treating themselves with enough worth that they won't accept sweeping negative statements about their entire character. Through these reinforcing exercises, a client gradually builds a sense of good self-worth plus good self-concept equals healthy self-esteem. They like remaining open to challenging comments while still setting limits on how far someone can push. That's the sweet spot. Feel a little bit of distress, a little stuff you don't like, or a moderate amount, but not when it's way over the line, so you're knocking down that sandcastle of self-worth and self-concept, right? These clients discover they actually believe that they have the positive qualities that we focus on reinforcing, and they like these things about themselves, while also feeling the sense of achievement that comes with standing up for themselves when it really matters, meaning when someone crosses a line. Now, in the short term, this process can be, we'll say a little bumpy because some of the people around the people I work with are in the habit of making those sweeping generalizations of character because they think that talking this way is normal. Accordingly, they're going to be resistant to the idea that there's anything wrong with these totally normal statements, right? But it's also normal to have lousy self-esteem, which is why I don't put much stock in normal. Get where I'm going from? Good, crazy, right? I've met so many people who have given up on having healthy self-esteem. And that includes some therapists. Yeah, as scary as that is. These people treat it as something they only really have on the absolute best of days. And you'll find a ton of content online that revels in the misery of life, about how women are mistreated or how men are disposable, about how the world hates this or that group. And, no joke, inequalities exist. But the particular way that these influencers present their case is, wait for it, highly narcissistic. The reason the misery porn is appealing to some people because it makes them feel important and special. It's that Simpsons meme, with Principal Skinner. Am I out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong. You know that one? I love that one. If you're really worried about protecting your sons from the influence of Andrew Tate, or you're worried that your daughter is going to become some radical anarcho-communist feminist wearing a Kill All Men t-shirt, then the best thing you can do is help them get a healthy sense of self by praising what they do right and what you value about their character, as well as telling them the things they do wrong without describing their entire person as something bad. Don't call your kids ungrateful. Don't call your kids spoiled. Don't call your kids difficult. They are being ungrateful. They are being selfish at that moment. Don't define them by their worst points. And some of people say, well, that was my entire childhood. Obviously, none of us were fortunate enough. None of us? Not all of us. There we go. Wow, I can't talk tonight. Not all of us were fortunate enough to have those sorts of parents that, give the constructive criticism and the healthy praise. So what do you do if you grew up having your character negatively defined for you in the way I just described? We'll get to that after the break. Do you have a story you think would be good for the show? Are you interested in sponsoring the show? Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my email. Nottherapyshow.com is the website. At nottherapyshow on social. So Not Therapy Show. Good God, it's gonna be a night. We're talking self-esteem, how to get it if you're surrounded by narcissists. And it's not therapy after this. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back and it's not therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We're still talking about how to develop healthy self-esteem if you've been raised in a narcissistic environment. And I'm not going to sugarcoat the fact that it takes a lot of work. On the bright side, the work actually isn't that awful once you get over the initial fear that you yourself are being a narcissist by thinking a few good things about yourself. Narcissists are so quick to call other people narcissists and a bunch of other things that are awful, since they assume everybody must have the bad characteristics that they themselves have, if they even think it's bad, because to a narcissist, every other person is an extension of their own reflection in the mirror. Now, people who grow up around narcissists usually have terrible self-esteem, because they're used to being told they're a bunch of awful things whenever they displease the narcissist. So, first rule of building a solid self-concept, the first step on the way to good self-esteem: stop calling yourself those awful things. Most of them are highly subjective. So, no more calling yourself a loser. Just because you've lost things doesn't mean you're a loser. Individual instances, not the whole of your character, right? Stuff like worthless and I'm useless, I'm no good, I'll never be good enough, right? Yeah, no more of that either. It's not true. If you're alive, you're worth something. You don't know what the future holds. If there are people you care about, you're probably being useful to someone. It can sometimes help to ask people that you trust how, you enrich their lives. Tell them you're feeling kind of down and, you need a reality check. Now, write down not what you think you're good at. Write down what values matter to you. What do you think makes up a good person? Preferably 3. If you can't settle on only 3, go for 5. But they're the ones that are the most important, in your opinion. If you have to choose between these values and others, these are your first principles, your prime motivators, right? If you're a Star Trek fan, your prime directive. Now, mine are integrity, compassion, and conscientiousness. Now, ask yourself if you are living in accordance with these values that you've written down to a reasonable degree. Emphasis on reasonable degree. Not based on a standard of perfection, just based on what you'd expect from a friend. Basically what you expect from anyone but you, right? If the answer to, am I living in accordance with this value to a reasonable degree that I would, the benchmark I would set for a friend, if the answer is yes, good, keep at it. If the answer is no, what do you need to change about how you're living your life? Now, if you live with a narcissist or you just got away from a narcissist, There are going to have been times where they manipulated or coerced you into doing things that were against your values. They may still be doing it. And you may have gotten into the habit of creating explanations for these lapses in living in accordance with your values as an understandable coping mechanism. You might have felt like you had no choice. You were forced into it. And that might be true, or you were manipulated into it, or you were tricked into it. But whatever the reason, it's better to start making changes so that going forward, you're living with less moral dissonance. You can't control what was in the past. You can only control what you're doing right now. Top 10 phrase, healthy goals are based on things you can control, right? Living in accordance with your values is the best way to build a solid self-concept. Being a moral person is more important than any other thing you identify with. Now, this might surprise you in an age where identity politics is an international blinking obsession. But, I mean, really, does it matter if someone is gay or straight, black or white, liberal or conservative, Asian or indigenous, cisgender or trans, Christian or Buddhist, blue or white collar, if they are an insufferable jerk that you cannot stand to be around? No, right? Exactly. Issues of physical description, pronouns, religious affiliation, and so on can help you navigate the world, but they can't help you feel better about yourself unless they align with those core values of yours. Granted, things like religion can inform those core values, but I find too many people twist things like religion to justify their own personal beliefs, as opposed to religion really shaping what they believe to be right. I'm not even sure how, I've used religion to challenge my core beliefs, but did they really shape them? I don't know. I just, mentioned trans people as a valid identity. I don't think that really worked, right? Now, the reason compassion is a core value of mine, and a core value of most of the religions out there, is that I've learned the hard way that top 10 phrase, healthy goals are based on things you can control, and top 10 phrase, self-esteem, cannot exist without self-compassion. In my case, I needed a lot more self-compassion. If you have one set of rules for yourself and another set of rules for everyone else, you're not going to be very happy. A narcissist has a much more lenient set of rules for themselves than they do for everyone else. Me and most of the people I work with professionally have a much higher bar for themselves than they do anyone else, and that is wrong. We're going to change that, okay? Don't worry about being wrong. This is a good thing to be wrong about. Ironically, the first person I ever heard you can't have one set of rules for yourself and another set of rules for everyone else from was my biological father, who himself had one set of rules for him. Those rules were basically that it was okay to blow up on people to get your way. And then another set of rules for everyone else, whom he expected to have the patience of saints. Obviously, this is not logical. As you can imagine, my father had pretty turbulent, unstable relationships, and that's putting it lightly. So, one set of rules for everyone, okay? If it's okay for other people to do, then it's okay for you to do because you're people. And if you really don't feel right letting yourself get away with something, maybe it's not okay for others to do either, and that's a good indication of boundaries that are good to set. This is the fastest way I know to find out who around you practices double standards themselves. Because those people really don't like it when they're not the exception to a rule. And guess what that's a sign of? Yep, might be narcissism. Might not, too. So don't worry about diagnosing people. This is why this show is called It's Not Therapy. Not therapy. You don't need to worry about the reason someone has a double standard. Focus on the double standard because the same rules apply for everyone, right? This is a double standard. Fair game. You're a narcissist. That lady on the radio or podcast told me so. Not okay. No, no, no. That is a sweeping generalization of their character. Leave that to the people qualified to diagnose personality disorders. Awesome. It's not therapy. The thing you have to worry about is yourself. If you keep a consistent set of standards and live in accordance with your values, you'll start to get a stable self-concept. And you will feel like that person you see that you are is worth something. In fact, a lot of something. Now, this might confuse you. It trips a lot of people up. Realizing that you're worth something and liking yourself aren't the same thing. Okay, there are always times that all of us don't like ourselves, right? All the separating did a bad thing from am a bad person. We all have terrible days where it all just crumbles, right? First, you have worth just because you're a person. You know, look at, if you've got a cat in your life, watch your cat. That cat knows what that cat is worth. They walk around going, I am a cat and I am amazing. Even when something startles them and they jump straight up in the air and then they spin around, it's like, I meant to do that, right? Yeah. Cats are masters of self-worth, right? Even when you don't like yourself, tell yourself you still have worth. Also, that's step one. Step two, when you find yourself not liking yourself, your priority is now to do the work to get back to a place where you do like yourself. And that's why knowing what those core values are and working back to figuring out what's out of alignment and getting back into alignment, that's very important. But it's coming. Don't worry. I have clients who have never known the feeling of liking themselves. So if that's you, you're far from alone, right? These clients grew up in profoundly abusive homes, or they were badly bullied as kids, and they're the sweetest people and they're super talented and they can't see any of it. Rah! I had the best job in the world that I get to take them on the theme park ride of they are amazing, right? So how do we do that? We start with very gentle positive reinforcements. What's something, anything connected to them that they like? Is it a skill? Is it knowing they care about not hurting people? Is it being a good listener? Anything. No joke. You're going to laugh. Maybe you won't laugh, but hear me out, okay? Clients have said they're like talking to, those chat bots, like those kind of chat bots, the racy ones. Yeah, well, I've encouraged them to get the bots to describe them and give them a starter list of positive qualities. So far, it's worked. I really don't care how you originally discover what you like about yourself. If it comes from like lewd furry manga, I do not care. There is nothing wrong with lewd furry manga. Somebody just sent me something. That's why it's front of mind. Research purposes only. I went there. This is a show. All right. Whatever it is. If you don't know what lewd furry manga is, don't look it up, please. Just don't worry about it. Find something you like about yourself. I love you, furries. That's a positive quality. I love you, otaku. That's a positive quality, right? I have been playing too much Death Stranding 2. There is no such thing as too much Death Stranding 2. Onward. Something you like about yourself. Okay. If you don't have something you like about yourself that can serve as a path, a directional marker, making changes is going to be like that Winnie the Pooh story. You know, the one where Pooh and Piglet think they're tracking the heffalump, but they're really just following their own footprints in a circle. People are like, what are you talking about? The heffalump's a thing. I saw it in the cartoon. The original book. I am so sorry now that I went to like furry stuff before this. No, I'm not. Winnie the Pooh and Piglet are amazing. I love the books, The Tao of Pooh and The Day of Piglet. They are great books. Okay, so for people who don't know the Heffalump story, they find these tracks in the snow, and they start following the tracks. And then there's another set of tracks and another set of tracks. They're, oh my God, there's this whole like party of animals. We're hunting them. They were going in a circle, and it was their own footprints. And that's what happens when you try to work on your self-esteem or make positive changes if you don't have that North Star, so to speak, of something you already know is positive about you for you to navigate. In order to have a fairly regular feeling that you like yourself, you have to learn to course correct when things go awry. And it is a much less painful process to make healthy changes if you have something you know is good to step back into when you realize things have gone off the rails, like it did with that manga stuff. Sense of humor is a major thing I deploy. This has been a rough show, but that's okay. It's entertaining. Okay. Here's an example other than my own practice of self-compassion there. You know you value kindness and compassion and you don't intend to hurt people, right? So you find out you hurt somebody. It's an accident. It's not a crisis. It's something you can learn from. Listen twice before you talk once. That's a top 10 phrase for a reason. Find out what happened and what you can course correct so you're not just following the Heffalump prints, right? That's a much better story to tell yourself than, oh my God, I can't do anything right. Everybody hates me. People are listening to this. What the heck was I talking about 5 minutes ago? Right? Right. Catastrophizing is the enemy of self-esteem. But if you've been raised by a narcissist or any kind of abuser, catastrophizing probably happened on every day ending in Y to keep everybody in their lane. So the idea of not catastrophizing it is totally foreign. So let's take a break. Well, I get myself together after that last segment and talk about how to cut down on catastrophizing, because that's going to lessen one of the biggest control levers narcissists have over your life, if you live with one or you have lived with one. Questions, comments, concerns, don't ask me for references of some of the stuff I talked about earlier in this segment. Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my email. Nottherapyshow.com is the website with the contact form. At nottherapyshow is the social medias. Stop catastrophizing, or at least start stopping. Start stopping after this break on It's Not Therapy.
The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca.
We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. I'm still punchy. I think it's the wildfire smoke. I have asthma. It's not been a good time. The weekend. Oy vey, Ishmir. Anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about self-esteem when you've been surrounded by narcissists. You might still be surrounded by narcissists. Before the break, I'd promised to give you some tips to avoid catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is believing that the worst thing that could possibly happen is the thing you're gonna focus on happening. It's common when you're feeling a lot of anxiety, because anxiety isn't caused by the objective difficulty of a task. Anxiety is about believing you're not capable of completing the task at hand, or thinking maybe you can't do it. No matter how difficult or easy you believe that task to be for other people. It's just this habit a lot of people get into. The minute you might fail, you think that you're gonna fail. And part of the reason I just wing it and make silly mistakes on this show is that if I can do it, then you can too. And recover in adorable fashion. Good God, I hope it's adorable fashion. So, if you've got something you have to do whether they think that you can do it or not. Like, record a show and you're having trouble breathing because you have asthma and your lungs are messed up from smoke outside, worrying about what will happen if you can't pull it off isn't a good use of your time and stress. This is very topical for me, this episode. Woo! So instead, focus on the steps you have to take to get the job done. For me, tonight, I have 48 minutes I have to speak. There are commercials on the radio. There are 48 divided by 4. That is my goal, right? Healthy goals are based on things you can control. I'm just over 30 minutes in. Yes. Top 10 phrase. Don't let problems that aren't your fault lead to mistakes that are. I can't control the weather. I can't control that I have asthma. I'm here giving it my best and making it topical, right? And afterwards, I'm going to work on that what if brain, that default mode network, not playing over and over and over again some of the things I said on this show. Right. Yeah. So how do you stop thinking about, well, if I fail, this will happen, and I've just embarrassed myself on the radio and the podcast version. Oh my God, I'm never going to live this down. No, you don't think that way. Because honestly, it's another show. People are getting a laugh. Nobody is going to know what I intended to do on this program. They find me. This is part of my charm. Just tangle up and tango on, right? And that's really the crux of not catastrophizing. Just don't catastrophize. It really is that simple. When you start going, oh my God, what if I, and all of high school, every university course was pure freak out. What if I fail? It was completely zero-sum high stakes. It wasn't my fault. But learn so that you don't have to. Instead of worrying about what you'll do if it doesn't go well, just maximize your chances of it working out. In this case, I made notes. I researched the concepts. And, what came out of my mouth came out of my mouth. But it'll be okay, right? We say it's not the end of the world. And it really isn't. But what does that mean? Making mistakes, having an off night, for me, the way I think about it, shows you who's really in your corner and who's a merciless jerk who just wants to take a cheap shot. Now, you may think, well, can't somebody be both? No, there's a big difference between laughing with you and laughing at you. And if somebody realizes you're sensitive about something and takes the crack anyway, they're not the Mickey in your corner when you're Rocky in the ring, right? That's not the person going, get up, you lousy bum, because Mickey loves you. That's the person going, why don't you just stay down? The Rocky movies would have been far less interesting and about 7 minutes long if that was the plot, right? The whole point of Rocky is it's not how hard you hit, it's how hard you get hit and keep getting back up. That's how you win. That's how we win. I repeat that to myself alongside my top 10 phrases. I can't use that as a top 10 phrase because that's Rocky Balboa's phrase, right? Go watch Rocky. It's a good movie. But that's pretty much it. Instead of what ifing, get on task. Just what's the first thing you have to do? If that seems too big, make it smaller and smaller and smaller. So if you have to write an essay and thinking about organizing your thoughts is too big, the first thing you have to do is start jotting down notes or open that word processor document, whatever program you use. Just that is your first step. no matter how freaked out you are by the task, that does not change. What you have to do does not change. The order in which you have to do them does not change. So don't let problems that aren't your fault lead to mistakes that are. Top 10 phrase. One foot in front of the other, one keystroke at a time, one word spoken to those of you out there listening. You get through it. It's not necessarily going to be the most brilliant thing you've ever done. That's the good thing. It doesn't have to be. It really doesn't. Trust me. I've done 139 episodes of this show. Maybe 25 of them are brilliant. And people are like, no, I love the show. It doesn't have to be brilliant, right? The whole point of me as a peer counselor, the whole point of this being it's not therapy, is I'm no expert. I'm giving you suggestions, not a diagnosis. I'm giving you stuff to try, not some clinically proven answer. Actually, a lot of these things are clinically proven. I just make them silly. Because let's face it, for me, if I make them silly, it takes the pressure down, right? I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to ace it every time. You know? It's like the show Family Guy. You know how most episodes of the show Family Guy are 90 seconds of funny and filler? That's what you have to think of. It's not about the rest of that. What are they up to now? 22, 24 minutes. It's not about the 22 minutes that are just there. It's the 90 seconds of funny. And especially with essay writing or script writing or anything like that involving writing, you'll get to a point where something will jump out at you, and that'll be the thing you focus everything on. And it doesn't have to be perfect the first try. It's not going to be get your ideas out and then edit. There are no brilliant writers. There are utterly genius editors, self-editors. Yeah. Okay. So we're not going for perfection, right? Perfect is a lie. Stop trying to be perfect. Top 10 phrase. Really, you aim for perfection, you're not going to start because it's impossible. Aim for good enough. What's good enough? What are your goals? What are you doing every day to live in accordance with your values? Not other people's expectations of you, not the demands and guilt trips and nagging of other people. What can you do in this task to validate yourself via feeling like you did the right thing? If you can find a way to do that in difficult tasks, even if the outcomes don't go your way, you can feel somewhat good about what you did. And that is the difference between having healthy self-esteem and being a narcissist who needs that high wire act of admiration and specialness and attention, right? A narcissist is all about, if it turns out well, then it's great. If it turns out terribly, then, you know, a certain president fires the statistics person because he didn't like what the statistics said. Don't be like that, right? That's the difference. Because to somebody with healthy self-esteem, not everything has to go your way. In fact, lots of things cannot go your way, and you still feel okay because you kept to the path of your values. Whereas somebody who is purely driven by the idea that they are special and better than everyone else, anything that sends the message that they aren't, well, that's a true catastrophe because it's an emperor has no clothes moment, right? So what's some other things you can do to separate healthy self-esteem and narcissism? What's a way you can deal with the narcissistic abuse that you've suffered or are continuing to suffer and build up that healthy self-esteem even if the narcissist is still in your life? I'll talk about that in the final break, or at least offer some support for people going through it. This is not the night to be brilliant. Question, comments, any feedback. You want to just say, hey, awesome for getting through the show. Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my email. Nottherapyshow.com is my website. At nottherapyshow on social media. When we come back, how to protect your self-esteem if you're still dealing with a narcissist on It's Not Therapy.
The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca.
We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. I actually timed this show fairly well tonight, all things considered. If you're just tuning in on radio to this train wreck tonight, you may want to go back and listen to the podcast version wherever you get your podcast, because it's been hilarious. I am coping with not thinking the clearest because I have asthma and the wildfire smoke has done a number on me. The weekend was rough and I'm still not okay. But we are keeping on anyway. Keeping on. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So, say you still have a narcissist in your life and it's still doing a number on your self-esteem. And you constantly get into this ridiculous fights, or you keep running stuff back in your mind. You just can't shake it. Especially if the person is gone and you're still haunted by some of the things that they did to you or made you feel. Maybe there's certain phrases that you can't get out of your head. Well, that's a work in progress, right? This is one of these things I admit I don't totally have figured out. I do know what helps. And one of the things that really helps me is to use some compassion and recognize that narcissism is a disorder for a reason. No matter how much the narcissist self-aggrandizes, no matter how much they act like they are the greatest thing ever. Think about the fact that no matter how much they've done, because there are some very rich narcissists out there, no matter how much they've done, it's not enough. They still have to make up something they haven't earned to take credit for, because that's the hallmark of the condition, right? It's an exaggerated sense of self, achievement, and value. So it is never enough. If you can be like Ken in the Barbie movie and find what's enough for you, no matter what the narcissist says, that's it. That's the game. You've won. Not that it's about that. It's more like a survival horror game where you just escape. But, ultimately you will feel a lot better about yourself if you set healthy goals based on things you can control. Okay, what's one thing that you're going to do in this difficult encounter? What's a point you really want to bring up? Okay, make sure that you've brought that up. Or give yourself, I'm, just not going to take their bait. I'm going to let it bounce off me 3 times. It's very important to set a baseline that is not, I'm not going to take the bait the whole time, right? Because narcissists are really good at getting people to crack. They'll just poke every button in the elevator. It'll stop at every floor. Eventually one will be the one that opens the door on something weird, right? Like this show for me tonight. But that's the thing, right? If you focus on the times you were more resilient this time than you have been previously, not perfection. They might still eventually get to you, but hey, maybe you lasted 5 minutes longer. Maybe you absorbed a couple more insults without feeling terrible about it. That is an achievement. That is real. That is real progress. Good job. Give yourself some credit. The narcissist cannot take that from you, because what you just did there is something they are not capable of understanding. That's it. That's the game. There's your stealth. There's a place you can hide bits of you that are real and have value that the narcissist or other type of abuser cannot touch. That's really the only thing I've found that works reliably, even when you get torn down, even when you break, especially if you bend. It takes a while, especially if you're dealing with family members, to extract yourself from these situations, because you got a lifetime of habits to relearn and unlearn, right? Going no contact is absolutely a good option if you can do it. Some people can't. So every little improvement, every time you last a little longer, good for you. Now, say you don't live with the narcissist, say you're just going to visit and it always ends in fireworks, shall we say. Now, this may be unavoidable because they're just too good at getting under your skin, and that's okay. That's on them, not you. Don't let problems that aren't your fault lead to mistakes that are, okay? It's called getting under your skin for a reason. You don't ask for those, cactus needles to get in there. So they're violating boundaries. You're not being weak, okay? It doesn't work that way. Figure out a pre-planned exit strategy that isn't quite as explosive. Like, oh, gotta go. See you later. Love you. Bye. Right? Just something where you just exit and they may complain about how you did it. In fact, they probably will complain about how you did it, but it is better than really losing it on them. And I come at this from a place where when, those family members start on me, I still feel like I'm a 6-year-old kid again. And I have to remind myself, I'm an adult with choices. I can get up and walk out. And it's amazing how still sometimes your body won't move. It's a really, really tough one. But the more you just take steps to being different than them, breaking that cycle, not falling into the same patterns, right? That's a win. It's always a win. And no matter what, just remember that they are trapped with the feeling that the truth of who they are, what they've done, and what they're worth to the world, no matter how good it is, it's never enough. Think about what that's like, and it's okay to pity them. Questions, comments, any feedback whatsoever on this show, Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my email. Nottherapyshow.com is the website. At nottherapy on social media. Remember, you're crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you. I get to stop talking now. See you next time.